Hey guys, happy Monday. I've decided to film outside today because some of the kids are up, my husband's up, and everybody's working from home, so the house is loud. So I'm outside. It's a glorious morning. Sun's shining. The rest of the week's not supposed to be so nice, so get outside. Classic today, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Some of you may have seen the movie. Movie is much different than the book. The book is a good one. The illustrations in this book are amazing. So if you've never seen the illustrations up close, this is one you may want to borrow when this is all over. Go online and see if you can look at it. So I'll try to hold the pictures so you can take a look. One thing I love that the illustrator does, and we may have read this in class, I can't remember, but this picture is black and white. There's no color yet. And as the scene unfolds, you'll see what happens. We were all sitting around the big kitchen table. It was Saturday morning, pancake morning. Mom was squeezing oranges for juice. Henry and I were betting on how many pancakes we could each eat, and Grandpa was doing the flipping. Seconds later, something flew through the air and headed towards the kitchen ceiling. No color yet. And landed right on Henry. After we realized that the flying object was only a pancake, we all started laughing, even Grandpa. Breakfast continued quite uneventfully, and all the other pancakes landed in the pan, and all of them were eaten, even the one that landed on Henry. See, look what's happening with the color now. The illustrator started introducing some yellows. So the color's starting to change, which tells the reader, something's gonna happen. That night, touched off by the pancake incident at breakfast, Grandpa told us the best tall tale bedtime story he had ever told. And here's how the story starts. Across an ocean, over lots of huge bumpy mountains, across 3 hot deserts and 1 small ocean, there lay the tiny town of Chew and Swallow. In most ways, it was very much like any other tiny town. It had a main street lined with stores, houses with trees and gardens around them, a schoolhouse, about 300 people, and some assorted cats and dogs. But there were no food stores in the town of Chew and Swallow. They didn't need any. The sky supplied all the food that they could possibly want. The only thing that was really different about Chew and Swallow was its weather, because it came 3 times a day, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And everything that everyone ate came from the sky. This is such a great illustration. This is the sky, the town's down here, so this is the weather that's blowing in. Whatever the weather served was what they ate, but it never rained rain, and it never snowed snow, and it never blew just wind. It rained things like soup and juice, it snowed mashed potatoes and green peas, and sometimes the wind blew in storms of hamburgers. You can see them coming in. The people could watch the weather report on television in the morning, and then they would hear a prediction for the next day's food. And what I love about this is if you look in his closet, he's got a bowl, he's got a cup, all of his silverware and plates, and he's going out with his forks and knives. So that's what's in his closet instead of an umbrella. It's kind of funny. When the townspeople went outside, they carried their plates, cups, glasses, forks, spoons, knives, and napkins with them. That way, they would always be prepared for any kind of weather. If there were leftovers, and there usually were, the people took them home and put them in the refrigerators in case they got hungry between meals. And I love it because like the kids are in the middle of a baseball game and they have to stop because the weather's coming in. And it says the game's called on account of pie, which means they had to stop it because it was raining pie. The menu varied. By the time they woke up in the morning, breakfast was coming down, and after a brief shower of orange juice, low clouds of sunny side-up eggs moved in, followed by pieces of toast. Butter and jelly sprinkled down for the toast, and most of the time it rained milk afterwards. And I'll leave this here so you can see the picture. For lunch one day, frankfurters, and if you don't know what a frankfurter is just another name for a hot dog. So for lunch one day, frankfurters, already in their rolls, blew in from the northwest at about 5 miles an hour. There were mustard clouds nearby, and then the wind shifted to the east and brought in baked beans. A drizzle of soda finished off the meal. What I love about this one, they're at a restaurant, and there's no roof. There's no ceiling. And they just put their plates out, and their food falls down from the sky. Dinner one night consisted of lamb chops, becoming heavy at times, with occasional ketchup. Periods of peas and baked potatoes were followed by gradual clearing, with a wonderful jello setting in the west. The sanitation department is another name for like your garbage men. So the sanitation department of Chew and Swallow had a rather unusual job for a sanitation department. It had to remove the food that fell on the houses and the sidewalks and the lawns. The workers cleaned things up after every meal and fed all the dogs and the cats. And then they emptied some into the surrounding oceans for the fish and the turtles and the whales to eat. The rest of the food was put back into the earth so that the soil would be richer for the people's flower gardens. Sounds like a pretty cool idea. So they feed the townspeople and all the animals in the ocean. What could possibly go wrong with that? For the townspeople, life for the townspeople was delicious until the weather took a turn for the worse. And if you look at the headline, this is the local newspaper. It says spaghetti ties the town up. So much spaghetti fell that the policemen are up to their knees in spaghetti. So clearly this is going to be tough to clean up. One day there was nothing but gorgonzola cheese all day. And if you don't know what gorgonzola cheese is, it's really, really, really stinky cheese. And the next day there was only broccoli, but it was all overcooked. Look at the broccoli sagging. It's so overcooked. And the next day, there were Brussels sprouts and peanut butter with mayonnaise. Oh my goodness, so here this girl's having a birthday party and that's what they're serving. Brussels sprouts, peanut butter, and mayonnaise. And another day, there was a pea soup fog. Nobody could see where they were going and they could barely find the rest of the meal that got stuck in the fog. How would you like that to be your birthday party? Brussels sprouts, mayonnaise? Ooh. I'm an adult and I don't even like that stuff. I'm not going to show you the next picture because the next picture is a good one. The food was getting larger and larger, and so were the portions. The people were getting frightened. Violent storms blew up frequently, and awful things were happening. One Tuesday, there was a hurricane of bread and rolls, and all day long it rolled into the night. There were soft rolls and hard rolls, some with seeds, some without seeds. There was white bread and rye bread and whole wheat toast. Most of it was larger than they had ever seen bread and rolls before. It was a terrible, terrible day. Everybody had to stay indoors. Roofs were damaged, and the sanitation department was beside itself. The mess took the workers 4 days to clean up, and the sea was full of floating rolls. So this boy's at the beach, and these are all rolls. To help out, the people piled up as much bread as they could in their backyards. The birds picked at it a bit, but it just stayed there, and it got staler and staler and staler. And stale means when you leave bread out, it gets really hard and yucky, and the more you leave it out, it almost turns into like a hard crouton, but even the birds can't eat that much. Wait till you see what happened to school. Oh my goodness. Looks really delicious, but think about it. That couldn't really happen. There was a storm of pancakes one morning and a downpour of maple syrup that nearly flooded the town. A huge pancake covered the school. Nobody could get it off because of its weight, so they had to close school. Maybe we could try to eat our way through to get to the school doors. That would be a challenge. Lunch one day brought 15-inch drifts of cream cheese and jelly sandwiches. Everybody ate themselves sick, and the day ended with a stomach ache. So the townspeople are trying to eat everything to keep up, but they just can't. Then there was an awful salt and pepper wind accompanied by an even worse tomato tornado. People were sneezing themselves silly and running to avoid the tomatoes. The town was a mess. There were seeds and pulp everywhere. And I love the man taking a bath, and the tomato tornado picked him up. Again, we've talked about make-believe and real. This is definitely make-believe. This is one of my favorite pictures because I love the guy running and a noodle falls on his head. And then there's a pickle. I don't know if you could see that, but the pickle goes through the roof into the woman's living room. And this woman's walking a stroller and their donuts are rolling after chasing her. I just think the illustrations are fantastic in this. The sanitation department gave up. The job was way too big. Everybody feared for their lives. They couldn't go outside most of the time, and many of the houses had been badly damaged by giant meatballs. Stores were boarded up, and there was no more school for the children. So a decision was made to abandon the town of Chew and Swallow. It was a matter of their survival. And if you look at the sky, it's blowing in like pork chops or something. It's hilarious. And the giant meat, there's a hamburger on top of the chimney. There's olives on the church steeple. There's a lot to look at this picture. The people glued the giant pieces of stale bread sandwich style with peanut butter. They took the absolute necessities with them and they set sail on their rafts for a new land. So here they're very resourceful. They're using the bread and peanut butter to make rafts. Here's a sail made out of Swiss cheese and pizza. So they're using all the old food to make boats and rafts to get out of the town of Chew and Swallow. Pretty smart. Look at, we're starting to go back to black and white again. Here's some yellow only, and over here is just black and white. I wonder what's going to happen. Maybe it's getting towards the end of the story. After being afloat for a week, they finally reached a small coastal town which welcomed them. The bread had held up surprisingly well enough for them to build temporary houses for themselves out of it. So they took all the stale bread that they made their rafts and they made houses for themselves. Pretty interesting idea. Oh, and here comes Grandpa. He's in the next picture. The children began school again, and the adults all tried to find places for themselves in the new land. The biggest change that they had to make was getting used to buying food at a supermarket. They found it odd that food was kept on shelves, packaged in boxes, cans, and bottles. Meat that had to be cooked was kept in large refrigerators, and nothing came down from the sky except for rain and snow. The clouds above their heads were not made of fried eggs, and nobody ever got hit by a hamburger again. And nobody dared to go back to Chew and Swallow to find out what happened to it. They were too afraid. Henry and I were awake until the very end of Grandpa's story, and I remember his goodnight kiss. So Grandpa's story's over. We're getting back to black and white. Henry's yawning. It's time for bed. Looks like they're going to sleep. The next morning, we woke up to see snow falling outside of our window. We ran downstairs for breakfast and ate a little bit faster than usual so we could go sledding with Grandpa. There's Grandpa. It was funny, but even as we were sliding down the hill, we thought that we saw a giant pat of butter on top, and we could almost smell mashed potatoes. The end. So some of you might not know, but there is a sequel to this story. So there's a number 2, part 2. It's called Pickles Over Pittsburgh, which I actually happen to have here. I found it. So tomorrow we'll read the sequel to this. Have a great day. Get outside. The rest of the week's not supposed to be so nice. So enjoy the sunshine, and I hope you're all doing well. I miss you dearly. Feel free to send me a message. Okay, bye.